I am Eugene McGuire, the grandfather and father of Rosie and John and all the rest of the McGuires. And when Margaret died, I don't remember the whole story, but we were sitting at the table and we started just talking and of things that I had done and had brought me and Margaret together. And John wasn't there that night. He didn't get in until around midnight, I'd say, or maybe later. And he wanted to hear the story, so I don't know. Rosie will have to prompt me through this thing because I really don't know everything I talked about. But
Okay. You briefly said where you were born and where you graduated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was born on the top of a mountain. It's a hill, really, in North Alabama. It's north of Altoona, Alabama. My address was a route in Altoona, Alabama. It was in a log cabin and on top of Dog Hill. And last year, after Margaret died, I decided to go up there. Rosie took me up to my sister's house, and it was Mother's Day of last year. And we went where I was born and my sisters were born, and sort of a trip down memory lane. And the place was, the road and everything was the same, hadn't changed other than they'd paved it. The building that I was born in was gone. The building that my baby sister was born was gone, and the one that my oldest sister was born with was gone, but they had a beautiful house sitting in its place.
It was beautiful.
And I used to tell the grandkids a story about when I was a kid and my daddy gave me a coaster wagon, little red radio flyer coaster wagon for Christmas. And my cousin was living with us, and he had a dog by the name of Joe. And I had a steep hill at the house, and I would ride down that hill, and then I'd get the wagon and go back up and ride it down. So my brother and my cousin decided they'd hook old Joe to the wagon, and we had a barn down behind the house and had the horses and the cows in the pasture behind the barn. And Joe was a smart dog, and you could tell him whoa, and he'd get the horses, and he'd say hey, and he'd go get the cows. Anyway, my brother hooked him up to my little red coaster wagon, put me in it, and said, whoa, Joe, and he took off. He's going to go get the horses. And I'm scared to death. I'm holding on to the side of that little red coaster wagon with both hands, and that wagon's going down the hill, and we're just hitting every 10 feet or so, and I'm scared to death. And guess what I'm saying? Whoa, Joe, whoa, Joe. He's going faster and faster. And finally we hit the bottom of the hill, and old Joe tries to come out the other side, and he stalls out, and I bail out of the wagon. And my brother and my cousin was up just laughing, having the best time, and I was just scared to death. And before my brother died, I talked to him about that. I'll remember as long as I live, but he didn't even remember doing it. And then on the trip when we went up there last year, I took Rose with me, and I said, that's the hill that old Joe and me went down. And she said, God, that is steep.
I said, it's a miracle you survived that.
Yeah. But it was one of the things. And then I talked to my sister the other day, and she still enjoyed that trip. And we'll have to go back up there and do that again.
Okay, now Dad, you were born 1922, November the 27th, right?
Yeah.
And you lived in that area your whole life, and you graduated from high school at Aniana High School.
Yes.
You played football.
Yes.
You broke your leg playing football.
Yes.
And you didn't go to the doctor, right?
No.
just healed naturally.
Yes, it was in spring training
Mm-hmm.
when I hurt my leg, and of course you have to do a lot of plowing in the spring, and when I first got home I couldn't hardly walk on it, and my daddy didn't want me playing football anyway, so he said, "You want crutches, boy?" And I said, "No." And the next morning I couldn't walk on it at all, so I got a chair and put my knee in the chair. It was broke down below, on small bone below my knee. And Mama got some hot towels and got it where I could walk, and I went on to school, and each day it got a little better, but all during that spring when I'm plowing I could step on a clod of dirt that caused my toes to be up, and I'd go to my knee because that just hurt so bad. And then after I got in the military, it was probably 10 years later, I was in the hospital and they took x-rays and they said, "Did you ever break your leg?" And I thought back and I said, "Yeah, I guess I did." And they could see the break where it had healed there.
Healed a little funny,
it had
didn't
a
it?
knot on it.
Yeah, knot. Okay, so when did you graduate? What year from Aniana High School?
42.
Okay, and who was the football coach you played for?
Claire Strickland.
Okay. And after that, there was a guy that became a coach there that was good friends with Coach Homer Smiles, right?
Really? I don't know.
Yeah, okay. At Aniana.
I know that we was poor growing up, and you had to pay some kind of dues. I don't know what it was when I graduated. And I remember coming back on leave from the military, and it was like $12 or something I owed them. I went down there and paid him for that.
Oh.
I think it was, I don't know if it was what it was for, but it
Did
was
they
some kind
ever
of-
really expect you to pay?
I doubt it.
But that's
but
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you graduate, and then what do you do when you graduate from high school?
Went straight into the military.
Well, wait now. Didn't you work down in Mobile for a while?
Yeah, but it was just, I went to airplane rigging school in Auburn, and that was like 3 months, I would say.
So what does rigging do?
That was working on airplanes. It was, back then the airplanes were made out of, the light airplanes were made out of cloth, and we would just put new cloth over the wings and fuselage, and just taught us in general. And then they had a glider school at Mobile, and when I graduated from this school in Auburn, I went down there and worked at the glider school, and I worked on the flight line there, hooking up gliders to the tow planes. And then it's coming Christmas time of 42.
And you graduated from high school when?
42.
42.
Yeah. And they said nobody could go home for Christmas, and I'd already, on the way to Auburn one time, I had stopped up and joined the Army Air Corps Reserves, and I knew I was going to be recalled to duty any time, so I just went home, and then in February of 43, I was called to active duty.
But now, didn't you tell me you took a battery of tests in Birmingham
Yeah.
for the Navy?
Yes.
And they didn't sign you up, they just gave you the paperwork.
They didn't swear me in. And then
You decided you didn't want
I
to?
decided I didn't want to go to the Navy, and next time I was down there, I went and said, "Let me see if I can take the Army Air Corps test or pass it," and I passed that, and before I could get out that day, they had sworn me in.
Okay, so the Navy didn't, the Army did.
Yeah,
So you were signed up, when they swear you in, you're in the reserves?
I was a private in the Army Reserve.
All right, so how did you go from private to a
Well,
officer?
Well, hold on. I got questions first. So, what made you want to go in the Army Air Corps?
Because I figured that the base would always be back there in the Army Air Corps, and if I was in the Navy, I didn't know if that carrier would be there when I got back from a mission or not. I said, I think I'll just switch over here.
Did you ever go on a carrier?
Yeah, but that was after I'd been in the service for a long time.
Okay.
And what made you? I mean, did you know that you were going to be a pilot or wanted to be a
No,
pilot?
you just was going. You was applied for Army Air Corps Aviation, and you could have ended up as anything. You could have ended up as a gunner, a navigator, a bombardier, anything. You didn't know what you was going to be.
So, how did you know? What was about the test that they categorized you as a pilot candidate?
I took a battery of tests
You
after
must
I
have
got
done
in.
well on it.
Well, you had the classification test, and you took a battery of tests after you was in. I went after I was called to duty in February, and I went to Miami Beach for basic training. And they had the hotels. The Army had taken over the hotels on Miami Beach.
And there was those Art Deco hotels,
Well,
right?
my hotel that I was in was Broad Ripple Hotel. And we had taken over all the hotels on the beach the Army had, and that's all you could
That's
see.
a really hot spot now,
Yeah.
that area.
That's all you could see was Army people, and they used part of it for rest and recuperation for those that are coming back and for basic training. Then I went out, after I left Miami, I went to the University of Tennessee for what they call CTD training, which was college detachment training. And I was there for about 3 months, taking just regular college courses.
And where did you live there?
I lived for a while I lived in the stadium, football stadium, on the south side of the stadium.
They have apartments there.
They had nice apartments in there.
I think they still do.
And then we lived in the gym part of the time. And then went from there to Classification Center in Nashville.
Did you like Tennessee campus?
Oh, I loved it. It was nice.
Did you like Auburn?
I liked Auburn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When I was at Auburn, I worked. I lived in we had little cabins there, and well, the guy that lived in the cabin with me was in charge of cleaning up the athletes' dining hall after the meals. And we'd go in there at night, and clean up, and always had all the ice cream and stuff we wanted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked there
So
at
you
night.
didn't go hungry there, did
Never,
you?
no.
All right, so we're back at Tennessee. You lived part of the time at the stadium,
Yeah,
part of the time in the gym, and you were there about 3 months, and it was college courses.
yes.
And what kind of college courses?
Regular, mostly sciences and math and sciences and just regular old English.
Are you taking classes with the regular student
With
body?
co-ed, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
We'd
But you were military group.
Yeah, we'd fall out and we'd march to the classes, and we all didn't go to the same class at the same time. We had different classes, and we'd go marching in, and the other students would be there already. We'd go marching in, take our place, and then, but we just fit right in. The only thing different was we marched to class and the rest of the people didn't.
Oh, okay.
Same
Alright, so-
teachers, same course, same everything.
So after you finished your class, 3 months there,
Yeah.
where did they send you?
Went to Classification Center at Nashville, and that's where we took all the battery of tests for what they was going to classify us
Oh, okay.
as.
All right.
And it was a lot of, hand coordination
Mhm.
stuff, a lot of written tests, and after you finished your battery of tests, you just wait and go out and check the board and see what they classified you as, and you'd come out on a list, and my name came out on the pilot's list.
Were you excited?
Oh yeah, everybody wanted to be a pilot.
Okay. So then after you were classified, where'd you go?
I went to Maxwell Air Force Base
Oh.
to
Okay.
pre-flight.
Mhm.
And there that's where we started our regular cadet training. Up until that point, I started out as a private,
Mhm.
and then I was
What'd you make as a private?
$21 a month when I first went in. And then I became.
But they fed you and boarded you?
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
And then I became a cadet candidate when I was going through college.
At Tennessee?
Tennessee, we wore the little prop on our hat and all that stuff. You saw that in that?
No,
in-
I'll
in
have to
the-
show John. Did I show you that book I got for Papa?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll show it to you later.
And that was a aviation cadet candidate, and then.
What'd you make there?
I made $50 a month.
Wow, you doubled your money.
Yeah. No, I still made $21 a
Oh.
month. And then when I became a cadet, I got $50 a month.
That's when you were classified as a pilot.
No, yeah, and
Okay.
I went to pre-flight.
And you got 50.
$50.
So did you think you were rich?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was when I was in pre-flight, I got 50. And then when I started flying, I got 75. I got hazard pay for flying.
Where
Which was
that?
half of your
At
base.
Maxwell?
No, I didn't start flying until I got to Union City, Tennessee was the primary flying
Okay.
school.
Maxwell was more classroom stuff?
It was all classroom.
Maxwell's in Montgomery?
Yes. And you were
Yeah.
making 50 a month.
Yeah.
And then you got through with that school.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Maxwell.
Mhm.
It was one of those places where they hazed you. You had to walk in a rat line all the time. If you was underclassman, you walked in a rat line. The rat line meant that you couldn't turn your head right or left, and you had to take the outside of the walk all the time. Everything had to be at 90 degrees, all turned 90 degrees, and you know, just, it was hazing. Any of the upperclassmen could pull you out of the rat line and do whatever they wanted to with you, except couldn't hit you.
Did you ever get pulled?
Oh, lots of time, all the time, screamed at. And I was there, I'd say, at least a week. And you'd march, and you was marching with your upperclassmen. It wasn't just underclassmen. You was mixed in. And all you could see is the guy's back of the guy's head ahead in front of you. And I didn't even know what the place looked like until the upper class went on leave, and you could turn and look around. All I knew was what the hell on the back of the guy's
And
neck.
as Mike said, if you're not the lead dog, the view's always the same.
Yeah.
So you were how old? 18?
I was 19, John.
19. Okay.
And then after we got through, we had to walk tours too. If you screwed up in any way, anything, you
Did you ever walk a tour?
I've walked tours, yeah.
Do you remember what you screwed up on one of them to get a tour?
Didn't sign in. I had to go into a code class. I went,
And what is a code class?
where you took Morse code,
Oh, Morse code.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then I went from there to Union City, Tennessee.
So how long was this Maxwell stint?
3 months.
Then you go to back to Tennessee.
Back to Union City.
Okay.
And that was primary training. Flew PT-19s, and it was an open pit airplane with a,
What's an open pit?
where you have no
Cockpit?
you're just sitting in there and had nothing over your
Oh,
head.
really?
Yeah.
It wasn't a bi-wing or anything?
No, it's a single wing
And it was a prop?
prop.
Not very strong engines or anything?
No, it's just a little old airplane.
A P what now?
P-19.
Okay.
Oh, if that book's got
Yeah,
a
we'll
picture
get
of
the
it.
book and show it to everybody, the pictures.
And I was up there, and I loved to fly, and I always wanted to bail out. I just wanted something to happen to that damn airplane so bad that I could jump out, and never happened. Except one day I'm taking off, and the procedure was, if you lose an engine, you'd switch gas tanks, and you had a wing in your right tank, and you had a wing in your left tank. And you had a little valve down here beside your seat, and you would switch it. If it was on the left tank, you'd switch it to the right tank, and you had a pump over here with a handle on it about 2 feet long. You'd switch tank, hit the wobble pump, and that would, it was out of gas. And I took off, and the thing quit on takeoff, and I hit the wobble pump and switched tanks, hit the wobble pump, and it started up, and I'm going to do acrobatics that day. I go down to the acrobatic area, and I said, well, let me see if it'll run on the other tank, because the gauge showed it was full, the tank. And every time I switched over on the left tank, it quit. And I did my acrobatics, and I said, well, I better save enough gas in this right tank to get back, because that thing's not going to run on the left tank. And I got home and landed, and the next day I was called in on the mat wanting to know why I ran so low on gas. I only had just like a couple of gallons left on the other side. And I had written it up that the left gas tank didn't work. So that's the closest I came to bailing out. Never did bail out in my whole life.
And why did you want to bail out?
Yeah.
I just wanted the thrill of bailing out.
Wow.
And
But now, where was this training guy that had to land his airplane on top of a barracks?
Oh, that was in Hawaii.
Oh, you were already in the flying.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
yeah.
get to that later.
That was PT 14, I guess it was.
All right, so you've got through with the PT 19?
Yeah.
And where did they send you then?
I went to basic training at Newport, Newport, Arkansas.
Wow. How long has this gone now? Almost
Yeah,
a year?
3 months. Just
Everything was like a 3
3
month?
months,
Okay,
yeah.
so now you're in Arkansas.
Yeah,
Okay.
and flying BT-13s.
BT.
And it had a canopy on it. You could.
What's a BT?
Oh, let me tell you a little story back on the
What does BT stand for?
basic trainer.
Oh,
The
okay.
first one was a PT, which is primary trainer, and the BT was a basic trainer,
Okay,
13.
right.
Back in primary, I had the first instructor I had was just the nicest guy that you'd ever want. And they made him a flight commander. And then I got a new instructor, and what a butthole he was. He was beat my legs, you know, they'd have the stick was here between your leg, and we couldn't talk. I couldn't talk to him, but he could talk to me, because he had what they call a Gosport tube. He had like a funnel up here, he could talk to you, and you had the two tubes coming to your ears back here, and you could hear everything he said, but you didn't have, only thing you could do is scream at him, okay?
Yeah.
And if I did something wrong or he didn't like what I was doing, he'd take that stick and go whack, 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 and you couldn't get your knees apart fast enough. He'd hit your damn knees. So I just hated him, and I had let me tell you what he did. I told you my first instructor became a flight commander.
And he was a good instructor, and
he
wasn't
came, he came in and said, how many hours you got now? And I had said 20, and he says, let me get you shooting, I'll give you a 20-hour check. We had to have a 20-hour check. So I got me shooting, I would go in, I'd fly with him, and I'd do a good job. And he said, you passed it, and I'm so happy, you know, and my instructor comes in from flying with somebody else, and I told him, you know, the flight commander had given me my check, and I passed it. And, oh, he just cussed me out, up one side and down the other one. Says, when you're ready for a flight check, I'm damn sure I'll schedule you for it, you know, and he's just unreal. And he was so unreal, even on the last flight that I flew with that guy, we let him down into the traffic pattern, and we had a certain RPM that we had to hit. Mine was like 50 over or something like that. He told me to write a 5,000 word theme on the throttle, on the use of the throttle. And that was my last flight with him. I'm through, graduating from primary.
Yeah.
Now I swore to God, if I ever saw that guy again, I was going to beat his ass or he's going to beat mine. And it's him again.
Did he just take a disliking to you, or everybody?
No, I'd talk to the others.
Everybody disliked him.
Just didn't like him. He was just so bad.
Was he unhappy to be a?
I don't know.
Maybe he didn't want to be doing
They
flight
had a
training.
G on their, an S on their wings, saying service pilot, and it was just bad. He was bad.
But you survived him.
Survived him, and went on to basic.
Which went to Arkansas.
Went to Arkansas.
So now you're in a basic trainer.
Yeah.
And so you're there 3 months. Okay.
Yeah,
And that was a BT what?
BT-13.
Okay.
And
You did well there.
got through there. Didn't have any problems at all.
Did you notice a group of guys going with you? Kind of. Okay.
Yeah, everybody was. You'd sort of follow along.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd go. I went to advanced training from basic to. In basic, that was the first place we learned to fly instruments. We had a hood over the back of the in the back seat, and you flew your instruments from the back seat, and you'd have a hood that you just pull right up over you, and you couldn't see anything out. We didn't do any navigation, instrument navigation there. It was just basic, keeping the airplane upright. And this was a new thing. We hadn't been teaching instrument training. I guess they said they needed it, and so this was going to be the beginning of it.
So you guys were one of the first ones
And,
to do instrument training?
Well,
Your group?
the whole Air Force went to it.
But that was
Yeah,
like in that year they started?
Yeah, the story went that
Mm.
they was ferrying some B-17s or something over to England, and they had instruments set up and landing procedures for instrument approaches, and they asked the guy, said, the guy told him it's clear for approach, and they asked him, how's he going to do it? And he said, just pull the throttles back and go down, and just where he broke out, and he didn't know where he was or anything. So, and back then, the only thing we had for navigation aids was radio range stations, which had 4 legs, one like 4 beams, and in between it you had an A and an N. The A in Morse code was dit da, and the N was opposite da dit. So when you blended the A and the N together, you got a solid tone, and that meant you was on the beam, and that's where that saying comes from. Well, he's on the beam, see. Meant that and later on, when we got to advanced, we learned more about how to do the navigation, how to do approaches and so forth. But basic, we were just up there doing patterns and what they call procedure turns, where you could go down and make a 180, but you'd have to do it 200, do a 90-degree turn one way and then a 270 back to get you where you're going. So it was.
So that you were there 3 months.
3 months.
And then your basic group moves on again,
Yeah.
right?
Same
Where did you move on to?
We went down to Blytheville, Arkansas, to advanced training. We flew 18-9s there, which was a twin-engine airplane. It was hot. Had a high wing loading, and it didn't fly very good. It was, if you lost an engine, you had trouble keeping it airborne with one engine. And the story goes that if you could come over the end of the runway and cut your throttles all the way back and throw a brick out the window, and you'd beat the brick to the ground. It was such a high load.
And you were there 3 months doing that, okay?
Yeah.
Everything was 3 months, okay.
I graduated from flight school at Blytheville, and I had a guy by the name of Mayer. He's dead and gone now, and he was from Atlanta, Decatur, Georgia, in fact. And they had a certain period of time that you had to solo the airplane or be put up for a flight check. And Mayer, my name McGuire, him Mayer, we always was close to each other. And my instructor called me over and said, I want you to go out and fly with Mayer, and I want you to know you can't land that airplane. He said, your job is to teach him how to land the airplane, because we don't eliminate him. And I went out, and we went to auxiliary field, and left hand not knowing what the right hand did. But we got him where he could land the airplane, and he got through flight school.
Really?
And then we went overseas together after we graduated from Blytheville. He went over as a co-pilot, And I went we went to the same group. But before then, I had to go through B-24 transition. I was assigned to a B-24 school at Smyrna, Tennessee,
Wow.
after graduating.
Tennessee had a lot of stuff, didn't it?
And yeah, Smyrna's right outside of Nashville there.
So you went from Blytheville
To Smyrna.
Smyrna, and how long did you have to get indoctrinated into the flying of the B-24?
3 months.
Everything
about 3 months.
So in all this time span, it probably took you about a little over a year
See, I graduated in March of '44 from flight school.
at Blytheville.
And I went in '43. Took me a little over a year to get through flight school. Well, from the time I went in from my home to going through basic, CTD, and all the other stuff, it took me just a little over a year, from February to March to
So in Smyrna, you flew the B-24s.
Smyrna. I became B-24
And Mayor went
pilot.
up there with you.
No, Mayor went to a different school. He
Okay.
was not selected as a pilot. He was selected as a co-pilot.
Okay. Do you know what he went and flew?
He flew B-24s, a co-pilot in the
Oh,
B-24s.
So he had to go to a different school.
He went to a different school.
All right, so you finish up in Smyrna, Tennessee,
Yeah.
and they send you off to Italy.
No, I would go pick up my crew at Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was only there just a few days, 3 weeks at the most.
Can you name off your crew? Can you remember all their names?
Oh, yeah. And then I went to Casper and flew with them.
All right, so what was your crew? Is this the one that went to Italy with you?
Yeah, all of them except the Bombardier, and I picked up another Bombardier over there.
In Italy?
After I got to Italy, he
Okay.
had got shot up over Palesti, and he was in the hospital, and I picked him up, and he was okay.
So why didn't your bombardier go with you?
They sent him, that was when radar was first coming out, and they sent him to radar school. We were on our way, we were up at Norfolk and getting ready to leave from there, and they picked him up and sent him to radar
So
school.
you had to get a new bombardier.
Yeah.
All right, you get to Italy. Name off your crew.
Well, I've got to go through crew training. I've got my crew,
Yeah,
and then I go to Casper, Wyoming,
okay.
and I did my crew training at Casper, Wyoming,
Mhm.
and I had Carter Newhouse as my co-pilot.
Okay.
I had Jack Welch as the navigator. Ernie Moore was the bombardier that we was talking about that left me at Norfolk.
Okay.
And I had Joe Dungare was the upper turret gunner. Jacobs was the nose gunner. Alan Harrell was the engineer. Detterman was the lower turret gunner. And Morgan was the tail gunner. I think I got them all.
How many was in the crew?
10 altogether.
10 in all. Okay.
If I missed somebody, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, we were flying B-24s out of Casper, and that's, I think, when I look back over my whole career, that's the closest I ever come busting my butt, because it was in the summertime, hot afternoon, and we took off, and we had training bombs aboard, we had ammunition aboard, and the B-24 had a little solenoid valve. It was right in front of the pilot, behind the cock of the instrument panel. There was a crack about big enough to get your pencil through, that if something happened to the little solenoid valve is something that works electrically, but when you put the power to it, it pulls it back, and we could get the gear up. It let you pull the gear up, and it was there so you wouldn't pull the gear up on the ground inadvertently. And we took off, and the gear wouldn't come up, and I'm reaching in my pocket to get the pencil to push the little solenoid over, and the engineer got a little excited, and he put his foot on the landing gear handle, and he broke the linkage of the landing gear handle going out to the gear, and it just flopping back and forth. And about this time I lost number 3 engine, and we're just hanging over the heels out there with, can't get the gear up, it's going so slow, can't get the flaps up, and we took off with, I don't remember now, but 20 degrees of flaps or something to help you keep your speed down so you get off. Anyway, I knew we was in trouble, and we took off like going 270 degrees, and they were working on the north-south runway, which was 90 degrees to that runway. And I called the tower and told them we were in trouble. We'd lost the engine and couldn't get the gear up. And they said that they had construction going on that runway. And I said, you got to get them off. I can't make it back around. And we had a supercharger on the dash there that would give you full military power. All it was you had superchargers under each engine that would, I don't know how I'm going to explain it, but it spun and you gave you more air to give you more fluid, fuel going into your engine, and gave you more horsepower. And we turned that all the way up, but this time the engineers going back through the Bombay to the waist looking at the engine. Of course they were throwing out smoke, and he'd say, number 4's on fire, sir. He was from North Carolina. I said, let it burn. And we just we'd taken off to the west. We just made a slow turn. Came back around. By the time we got to the runway, they had cleared off the construction people, and we crossed the end of the runway. We put the flap panel down. It was all hydraulic on the B-24. By the time when the flaps went all the way down, the flap panel would kick back to neutral. Before the flap panel kicked back to neutral, we was already on the ground. Boy, we were just hanging out there with low airspeed, just barely hanging in there. And ever had all the power we could, and we didn't get enough speed to get our flaps up, and we were stuck. Only thing to do is get back down. And I think that's the closest we ever came with busting our butt.
So what did you all do after you got that plane landed and out of it?
We taxied around and told them what had happened, and got in another airplane and took off.
Oh my God. I thought you said you went to a bar maybe and got drunk afterwards.
Switch airplane.
Weren't you guys scared?
I don't think the rest of them were. I knew that we cheated death that day.
Does your crew realize that too? I mean, surely your crew...
I've talked to them since then, yeah.
Well, I mean, like at the reunion, I mean, do they realize that day you guys were lucky?
Yeah, they know that was a close
Okay.
one. Yeah.
It wasn't just you?
No, the co-pilot did.
Okay, so then you finish all this training.
And then we go home on leave, and then we leave, and I meet the crew, and we join up in Kansas, and we pick up in the airplane and fly up to Norfolk, and we're there, and we're flying patrol flights out of Norfolk, and orders come in for us to go overseas. And what they did then, they would take the orders and put them in sealed envelopes, and we would just take off. And after we got airborne, we would open the envelope, and it would say, you know, where you're going. So you'd call in your flight plan and say, okay, here we go. And
so why
the
did
crew
they keep it so secret?
That was the way they did it.
Did you know you were going somewhere though?
We know we
packed up.
We knew we were packed up. We knew we were going overseas. We were packed, and we knew we was going somewhere.
Okay.
And we
Did
opened
they
it
kind of
up.
give you a hint of what to pack?
No, you had everything.
Okay.
You live, everything you had's in that airplane.
Okay.
So we take off and open it up, and we're going to Foggia, Italy, or
Foggia.
Gioia was the name of the base we landed at. So we went up through Newfoundland and spent one day there, I think it was, and then we left Newfoundland and flew down through the Azores, and from the Azores we went we took off from Newfoundland and we landed in the Azores, and that was the first runway that I had landed on that was steel matting. We're just, you didn't have concrete or
You laid
dirt.
steel down?
It was steel. We landed on the mat, and then we stayed there a night or so, and then we went on up to Lebanon, and then from there we went to Gioia, Italy, and there we landed on grass field, and it was, left the airplane there, and then we were picked up from our squadron sent a crew down and picked us up from Gioia, and we got up to, I'd say, up in the squadron about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
But you flew.
Yeah,
When you say pick up, they came.
They picked us up in a B-24.
So what did you fly in on?
B-24.
And you left that one there?
Yeah, that was there. They would distribute the airplanes from there.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then we, they checked us in at the squadron. They escorted us over to the supply room where we were issued a tent and our cots, a mattress cover, pillows, and a blanket. And they said, this is your tent, you can make it. Make your home down there, and they officers over here and enlisted over here. So they
Okay,
enlisted.
how many people into a tent?
It was 4 officers and 6 airmen into the, well, enlisted. What they weren't called airmen back then, they were just enlisted. You know.
So it was 4 officers to a tent
Yeah.
and 6 enlisted to a tent?
Yeah, well.
Was their tents bigger than enlisted?
They were a little bigger, and the 4 officers in my tent, it was only 3 of us until we picked up, we didn't have a bombardier, see, we had left him behind at Norfolk.
Okay, so
And we was only 3
am
of
I
us.
to assume a 10-man crew had 4 officers and 6 enlisted?
Yes.
Okay.
And
So your pilot, your co-pilot, your navigator,
that was the 3 of us that
and
was
your
left.
bombardier were officers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were, and we left more behind, so I didn't have a bombardier.
Okay.
So it was so late, we said, let's just wait till tomorrow and we'll sleep in the airplane tonight. And we slept in the airplane first night we got in the squadron and pitched our tent the next morning.
And your bomb group was the 456?
I was in the 745th Squadron of the 456 Bomb Group.
Okay. All right.
And then the next day we pitched our tent, and we didn't have, as I say, our mattress cover consisted of a mattress cover, but we had those folding cots, so we lived in an olive orchard, so we went out to like a pasture out behind the olive orchard and got us some straw, like grass and stuff, and filled into the mattresses covers to make a mattress. And then we had that for a mattress, and then we had the cot, and then that was basically just, that's all we had from then on.
Not heated?
No, you didn't have anything. You just had the tent there. And we got there in October. So the first thing we did, we got some ends off the bombs. Bombs would come in crates and they had metal ends on them in squares like tiles. We took that metals and made us a floor in the dirt, made a metal floor out of it. And then we had, the fuel would come in 55-gallon drums for the airplanes. And we got a 55-gallon drum, and we cut it in 2, or cut it right in the middle. And there was no gas in it, of course. And then we cut a hole in the top of it and used 55-millimeter howitzer shells for the flue, for the smokestack. And we ran that out to the top of the tent. And then we took rolled us up a 55-gallon barrel of aviation gasoline from out of the olive orchard there where the head is scattered. And we put it up, made a little rack, put it up on the rack, and then if an airplane crashed or anything, you'd be like a bunch of vultures, you know, going out to get the tubing and stuff off of it because you needed that tubing, you know, to run your, you know, for your gas and for your water. And I'll get to the water in a minute. And we take that and you would run it from the 55-gallon tank outside under the tent and up into the 55-gallon drum, and you had a valve on it, of course, you could turn off, and what you would do is just control your heat by the amount of gas you let come into that drum. You fire it off, and the smoke and sparks and everything go out. We lost a lot of tents because it would collect soot and stuff our flue would be the 55 caliber howitzer shells, and or not the shells, but the, you know, the.
So who came up with this brilliant idea?
I don't know. It was like that when I got there.
Other people had it?
Oh, it was there, yeah.
Everybody just saw how they did it
and you did
followed suit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was her heat, was a 55-gallon gasoline can cut in two. And then our shower that we went was about a quarter to a half mile from the tent down through the olive orchard, and it was just a big shower house, public shower house, and everybody used it. And we decided that we needed something more sophisticated than that. And I told them I'd been there, I guess, this time a couple of months, and they had confidence in me. And I took B-24 back down to Georgia, where we first landed, and I saw some P-38 tanks there. And that was a drop tanks, P-38s. If they were escorting you, they'd go, and then when they ran out of tank, gasoline in their external tanks, they just drop them. And that was there to resupply them with their tanks. So I went down there and filled up that Bombay with P-38 tanks.
Did you ask for them?
No, I just helped myself. And we took them back to squadron, and my squadron commander, you know, I'm ready to take off. I'm out at the end of the runway. We got it all landing, ready to go, and they said, Tower called me and said, they want to see you back in operations. So when I got...
Did you act like you didn't hear it?
Oh, I didn't hear that. I got back and I told the commander he wanted a P-38 tank. He wanted water out by his tent.
Yeah, the commander did.
Yeah, and I wanted water at my tent. And I must have had 4 or 5 or 6, I don't remember how many I had. And went on, and I told him I got caught getting them. He said, okay. And that was the last I heard of that.
Really?
And what they would do is take those P-38 tanks and we set them up high. And we had those Italians working in the squadron, and they would take the toofy brick stuff and make us a little stand to put those P-38 tanks, and then the squadron had water trucks that would come and deliver water into the P-38. Now we have a water at the tent, and this is where the tubing comes in. The oxygen, our basin, was, I know you've seen these yellow type oxygen cylinders that they had, and we took one of those and cut it in half, and then we had the water coming down, and we had the faucet on that had a valve on that. We had running water in our tent. And one little thing more on living conditions. We had had our toilets was for just like outhouse. Maybe it was a 10 or 12 hole potty, okay? And you didn't only use that to do number 2. if you had to go pee, we had pipes in the ground outside the tents, about 3 or 4 inch pipe, and you in the ground, and you just go pee in the pipe. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
And that saved you from walking down to the. I was telling you about the Italian building the brick for the tank, for the P-38 tank. To get those bricks, we had to steal them, and if you wasn't flying the night before, you'd go out and you'd confiscate stuff you needed for the squadron. And the rule was you do not steal from anybody in your own group. Everything else was fair game. If you needed something, you got it, and you brought it back. And one night we were out getting brick to build an NCO club, and my upper turret gunner's name was Joe Dungaro, and he was Italian. He could speak it well, and we were getting these bricks right in front of this guy's house. I guess it was retainers for his yard there, and he didn't like it too well, and we said, Joe, go talk to him, and we gave Joe a package of cigarettes, and he goes over, and he's making small talk with the guy, and we're loading these bricks, and then as soon as we get the bricks loaded, we whistle for Joe, and we get aboard. He jumps aboard, and we go hauling off the poor man's brick. But that's just the way you did it. It wasn't, nothing that we're proud of, but that's how we got our stuff. I can remember the bridges that were all knocked out when the Germans were pushed back. They blew the bridges up behind them, and the Italians were going in there to try to get them going again. And if we needed brick, regular building brick, these were what we call toothy brick that we used around there. You just go get them. If you had a guard or no guard, you just go get them. We would go be armed, and we'd just distract them, and probably the guard didn't care anyway.
Every squadron did it, right?
Everybody was. That's the only way you got anything done.
And at this point, where your tents were, what was the name of that location?
That was in Stenoro.
Where does this
Cerignola was a town that was south of Stenoro.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the deal with Italy, since Benito Mussolini was still in power, right?
He was
still in power when you got there, right?
He was still alive. I don't know if he had any power or not.
So what was Italy?
In Cerignola.
Was Italy considered occupied by the Allies by then?
Yes.
Okay.
We had the southern part was. We didn't have the northern part
Okay.
yet. And I went to BX on the day that they hung him up there, and I was getting smart with a little Italian girl that worked in the BX, and I said, "Finito, Benito," and she thought that wasn't funny at all.
But the Italian people hung him.
They hung him.
And they hung him upside down.
Upside down.
Which is an insult.
Yeah.
So why were they mad at you? Americans didn't hang him.
Why don't come crowing to me? See, I can understand it. But anyway, that's what happens.
So your crew's there, and how many men are in a squadron? Or how many airplanes in a squadron?
I don't know. I just know that I don't know how many crews we had.
Oh, okay.
I would say that probably 20 or more, 25 maybe.
And in a bomb unit, in a bomb group, how many squadrons are normally in a bomb group?
4, yes, 4 squadrons.
Okay.
We had the 740, we start back, we had the 744, 745th, and the 746th and 747th in our squadron.
456?
In our 456.
And how many B-24 groups do you think were in that area?
I have no idea. It was a lot.
That book, List a
Air
bunch
was
of them.
probably 1,500 or more. Where the air on a mission with maximum effort, the air would be just full with B-24s.
Okay. And were you escorted by the
We were escorted by the black guys up north in the P-51.
the Red Tails,
Yeah.
the Talladega?
Yeah, they had P-38s when we first got there, and then they got P-51s.
That's what Robin Roberts' dad was saying. He probably might have escorted you.
Probably
The
did.
Tuskegee Airmen
Yeah.
were your escorts?
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh. They were good too, weren't they?
Yeah, they were good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I flew my first mission. You had to fly the first 2 or 3 missions, I don't remember now, with another crew. And then after that, you flew with your own crew from then on. And I flew.
Now, you were a co-pilot, didn't you fly
You flew first couple of missions as a co-pilot with another
an
crew.
experienced crew?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you got your own crew. And
All right, what was the tour? How many missions?
35 missions was the tour when I was there.
And how many missions did you fly?
34.
You were one short because the war ended?
Yes.
Okay.
But you had already come over there with a crew
Yes.
that you had gone through training with and
Yes.
practiced with,
Yes.
but then you got there in your first 2 missions you weren't with them?
No, I had to fly with another experienced crew.
So your crew kind of
And who
sat
flew
around?
with your crew?
Yeah.
Nobody flew with my crew.
And the other guy?
Okay.
After I had 2 missions with another
So-
crew, then I took my own crew.
So the other co-pilot got a day off,
Yeah,
Right.
that was.
unless they put him with somebody
They
else?
put him with somebody that needed co-pilot
Okay.
probably. I know that's my co-pilot was always a few missions behind me.
It's blinking, John.
Yeah, the tape just ended.
Oh, okay. See
So
where it ended.
I'm sorry, we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
And to make a long story short, the second mission I went on, it was supposed to be to Vienna, and that was a rough target, a lot of flak. And the crew that I was supposed to be getting experience from, the pilot chickened out. I hate to say this, but it's true, so help me God. And we were climbing out over the Alps, and he says, feather number 2. And I looked at the oil pressure, and there's nothing wrong with oil pressure. Everything's cool. And we turned around and came back home. And there was nothing wrong with that airplane.
Where were you going?
To Vienna, Austria.
Austria.
And
What, you were going to bomb there?
yeah,
Vienna was
belonged
part
to
of
Germany.
Germany. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it was controlled by Germany.
I will not say the man's name, but I met him at one of your reunions.
Yes, you did.
And he was a real bragger.
Yeah,
Brag, brag, brag.
yeah.
And you were very quiet, and later on you told me this story.
Yeah.
And you just said, don't say it, don't repeat it.
Yeah, but that's the truth, so help me.
So
He finally got pulled off his crew.
you said he got in trouble with the commander, right?
He got pulled off his crew and lost his crew. He was, I think he was just one of those that couldn't take it. He was worried to death. And he showed up.
And you never landed in Switzerland unless you really had something wrong with your plane.
But sometimes people did that, I'm sorry
And
to say.
the Swiss were neutral.
And you
So
could-
if you landed in Switzerland, what happened to your plane?
It stayed there. You didn't get it back.
That was a no-no.
Well, in my book it was.
Well, if someone landed in Switzerland, that was kind of a bad
Yeah,
tab.
you looked at him with a jaundiced eye,
Did they ever get another crew?
If he landed there and
Really had problems.
yeah, you didn't think too much of it because you could say, hell, he could have got back here.
Okay.
But
That was
that
kind of a
meant-
bad thing to land in
Yeah, you
Switzerland.
didn't want to do that.
And the Americans lost their airplane. They would never get it back.
No, it stayed there for the rest of the
Wow.
war.
Okay.
There's a couple of missions I'll talk to you about. One was to our group bombed Monte Cassino earlier in the war, and they dropped short of the target and then killed a lot of American soldiers that were stationed down at the foot of the mountain. And now let's move ahead from that and go toward the end of the war. And we're in the briefing room, and the Colonel Steed was our group commander, and we're going up to bomb the front lines again in northern Italy. And he was leading the first wave of 15th Air Force, and I was leading the second wave. And in the back of everybody's mind was that short drop at Monte Cassino. So before we start the mission, about a week or 2 weeks before this mission here started, I came home one day and my navigator and my bombardier is missing. And I called and said, "Where's my bombardier and navigator?" And they said, "They flew out of here in a P-38. And I found out that they went up to the northern lines to look at the target that we were going to hit this day. And they flew in P-38 troop snoops. And while they were up there, the rest of the crew was running flying in the airplane with following the ILS beams. And what they'd set up there was they had flags on the ground, and they'd set up an ILS beam that was perpendicular to or parallel to the lines, and they couldn't drop until we crossed that beam, ILS beam. And this day, old Colonel Steed says, "McGuire, if I'll drop short, I'm just going to keep on going." And said, "If you drop short, you call me and I'll turn around and go with you." And we went in there that day, and we flew up the Adriatic, and we had opened the bomb bay doors out over the water, so if we had any bombs hanging, they would fall out over the water. And then we turned in over the target, flew over the troops in echelon. That we had 27 airplanes in echelon. That means you had 20 in line, 27 airplanes. And then they'd all dropped off the leader, which was us that day. And we went in and hit the target, came off, and then the next day we went back and hit the same target again, same procedure. And our scheduled bombs away time and actual bombs away time was only 13 seconds off. So we made up for that Monte Cassino drop. And this was toward the end of the war, I'd say about a month or so before the end of the war. And another mission that I enjoyed was one morning, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, the operations clerk woke us up and said, "You gotta go fly." And I told him I wasn't scheduled to fly that day. And he said, "Yes, you are." And we got on the bus, and it was only 3 crews on the bus, and we went up and briefed, and we had to go up near Venice and knock out the guns that the Germans had moved in some guns that day, and we had to knock them out before the group went in behind us. And we went in, and I'd never seen these bombs before. They were 238-pound frag bombs, and they were about half the size of a 500-pounder, and they had grooves cut in them so they would just break off into fragments. And we had proximity fuses, which I hadn't heard of before, and that meant you could set them to go off different distances above the ground. They didn't have to hit the ground to explode. And we went in, and they started shooting, and we dropped the bombs, and they stopped shooting, and we went back home, and the mission was still circling the field for them, and we had to wait for them to get out of the way to land. We were back home, and before they ever got out of sight that day, and that was a good mission.
Well, let me ask you on the Monte Cassino. I told you I saw on the History Channel some young priest said there was no Germans dug in there. And you said that's not true.
Yeah, I went up there on a visit back in 80-something, and there's a big graveyard of Poles there that's buried, that's killed with Germans that day. I don't know why you could say that.
Okay.
And why would we go in there and bomb a church if they weren't there? That's bullshit.
They were dug in that mountain.
Yeah.
I had not heard that about the short.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that was a very touchy thing. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
You killed your own soldiers.
Yeah.
Or not you, but the first bombing
Yeah,
run
that-
on that. Okay.
Not gonna do that twice.
That has to be tough.
Yeah.
But, so name the name of the city again, because I never pronounce it correctly. That you and Mom, when you went there for the reunion, and you said there was a priest there too, that, was he one that was there during, he was a young boy in World War II, and he remembered your bomb squadron or your bomb group, or am I crazy? I thought you meant a priest that had been a young boy.
Yeah, Nino, we called
Yeah.
him. That was our tent boy.
He was your tent boy,
Yeah.
and he became a priest. Oh, and you said he treated you guys very good when you guys went for your reunion.
Yeah.
Wow, he remembered all of you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's nice, Dad. Let's see.
So how long were you based in Italy, Papa?
8 months. Went there in November and came back when the war was over in April.
And you were
October, rather.
You were one mission short of getting a
Yeah.
total of 35,
35,
right?
yeah. I got 34.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Start that, right?
What else do you want to
Okay,
go?
you said 35 was a normal tour. You got 34 and the war ended.
Yeah.
Okay, you were one short of a full tour. Okay.
Correct.
All right, we never did get, was your bombardier. Who did you pick up?
Oh
in
yeah,
Italy?
I didn't bring me up to date on. His name was Charles Meridian, and he was from up in Boston area, and he was on a Palesti raid, and he got his leg shot, and he got the Silver Star for that, and he was incapacitated, and he couldn't finish his missions with his crew, and he came over to my crew.
When he was healthy enough?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I started leading on the 13th mission and led all the rest of them after the 13th mission.
Say this again.
I started leading the squadron on the 13th mission.
Oh, you were leading the squadron. Well, then they thought a lot of you. Okay. Now, you said leading. So in the B-24, you said it was a hard plane to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because of the hydraulics on it.
No, it was just wasn't stable. You had to fly it all the time. It wouldn't sit there and fly by itself.
Okay.
You had to fly it.
But it had powerful engines.
It had good engines. It had Pratt Whitney engines.
And what
on it.
kind of bombs did you normally carry? How many?
It was about 5,000 pounds, either 1,000-pounders or 500-pounders.
Okay. And
Like this one.
what kind of guns were on it?
50 caliber machine guns with turrets, except for the waist gunners, and they only had single guns.
All right. Now, didn't you have a gunner get injured?
Yeah, my tail gunner got
Yeah.
his leg shot.
Okay. And you just wanted to get him back
Yeah.
because you can't reach your tail gunner till you land. Is that right? In that airplane.
Yeah, you could get to him, but we just left him back there. We were over the target, or close to the target, when he got his leg shot in two. And on the way back, instead of why bring him to the hospital when they've got to haul him back up to, why bring him home and have to haul him back to the hospital? So on the way home, I just stopped at the base where the hospital was and dropped him off.
Which wasn't your normal landing area?
No.
Okay.
Then I
Now,
came
did
on
he
home.
leave you after that?
I never did fly with him. Never did see him again after I visited him in the hospital.
But he was all right.
Yeah.
So you got another tail gunner.
Yeah.
Who was that?
He was a guy from Mobile,
What was his name?
I don't remember his name. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Who was in Philadelphia out of your crew? Managed to make it. And that was one practically your whole crew there for the reunion.
Philadelphia?
Yeah. There was one of them that wanted you to come to his home on the beach. You don't
Oh,
remember?
that was just another guy in the squadron.
Oh, it wasn't
that
your-
wasn't my crew
okay,
member.
okay.
No.
All right, so you got him back. All right, now, didn't you tell me your bombs you carried always had parachutes on them?
No.
Which bombs have parachutes?
That's nuclear bomb from B-52.
Because you needed to
Had-
get away.
Had to get escape
Oh, okay.
distance.
Not this World War II bombs.
No.
Okay. This was later generation
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So where do we go from here now?
I came back home after the war.
Well, didn't you get to go R&R to Egypt? Your crew?
Oh, did that. My crew was selected during the war as a outstanding crew. And we took a strip down B-24. That means it had no guns or anything in it. We flew down to Egypt, and we went from out and saw the pyramids and the Sphinx and all that stuff.
And what was your guide's name?
Alibaba.
Alibaba. And the 40 thieves. He swears he said the guy's name was Alibaba.
Yeah.
And you had a good time.
Oh, yeah.
And is this where you found out somebody asked you for some flight something form and you'd never heard of
Oh,
it?
that's the first time I'd ever seen a flight clearance. I took off and we landed in Egypt, and they wanted to know where my Form 23 was, which was flight plan. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. They said, well, it's the thing that you have to fill out before you leave. And I said, I just got an airplane and we just flew over here.
And nowadays that would be unheard of.
Yeah, and anyway, before I left Egypt going up to Tel Aviv, I filled out, that was my first Form 23 to fill out.
So what was in Tel Aviv that you wanted to see?
Tel Aviv was a new town then. The Jews had just built that, you know. They'd been thrown out of Germany, and this was their new land. They weren't, it was.
Just to put things in perspective, you told me it was Palestine.
It was.
Okay. And you said that you felt the Palestinians were too dumb to realize basically what was going on.
That's true.
And they felt sorry for the Jews
I don't
out
know
of
if they
Germany.
felt sorry or not, but they, I thought they was getting screwed, if you want to know the truth about it.
So you're saying this goes way back.
Yeah.
Basically, all this happened as a place for the Jews that were being persecuted,
Yeah.
and yet they go to another country, and all of a sudden this other country says, hey, years later, we got screwed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Out of our land.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So now that's why we have all this bitterness.
Yeah, that was the finest trip I ever went on, I think, was up there. We had the trip to Egypt, and then on up to Palestine. We went up to Bethlehem and went where Christ was born and all that stuff.
And
it
all
was a very good trip.
Okay. That was a little reward for your
That
crew.
was a reward.
Okay.
Had two trips like that. One was an award for having a good crew, and the other one was when everybody had a rest leave in the middle of their tour. And my rest tour came at the end of the 1944 Christmas of 1944, and I went to Isle of Capri, which was beautiful. And
you took Mom there on the reunion.
Yeah, on the
She
reunion
said she
we
could
went
stay
there.
there forever.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
said it was absolutely beautiful.
it's neat, clean, and we had a nice little hotel, and it was good.
And what is the place in Italy that it's its own country or principality? You gave
Yeah.
some money. Mom had some coins.
Yeah, I forget
can't-
what it is.
All right. So now you are done. The war is over, and you go home.
Yes, and I'm on 30 days leave.
And then what?
Then I'm assigned to the Ferry Command at Memphis, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
Well, first I went out to Long Beach, and then to
California.
Well, let me back off.
Okay.
Before that, the war ends. While I'm home on leave, I'm supposed to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and train in B-29s to go to the Pacific. Okay. I made captain during the war, and I'm the train commander. Okay, and I had to check in at Tampa, and we had this troop train, and we're headed to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the war ends while I'm on that troop train on the way up there.
In the Pacific.
In the Pacific,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And we, I had sense enough, to realize that we got to keep up what's going on. So before the train ever left Tampa, I got me somebody in charge of each car, got the names of everybody in each car, and then every time we stopped, we made sure that we had everybody was back. By the time we got there, I probably had lost, I'd say, 50 people.
They just didn't get back on the train?
Well, it happened in Des Moines. They came in and they said, we're going to be here for 2 hours, and then the damn train pulls out in an hour.
Oh, okay.
And they're here, they've got cabs, they're trying to catch the train, they want the train stopped. They're just doing their best. They'd flown a war and they want to go home.
Yeah.
They don't want to get in any kind of trouble, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And but when I got there and turned in my list, whatever they were, I don't remember how many, but it was a bunch. The damn provost marshal wanted to court martial them, and I said, no, you're not going to do no such.
Because the train left early.
Yeah, and I said, I won't stand for that. And nothing ever happened to them.
And they all showed up.
All showed up within the day.
The train left early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're up in Sioux Falls, right?
Yeah.
And what happens?
The war's over and everybody wants to go home, and I wasn't anxious to go home. I'd plowed that old mule, and I wasn't too anxious.
And as you said, you never had any desire to
go
pick
back.
cotton ever again.
Yeah.
The Air Force.
So I said,
Army Air Corps was your
they're
outlet.
trying to give you deals, and I said, no, I'm going to stay in. And I went out to a little base in New Mexico, Deming, I believe it was, some little old base out there, and then ended up out at Long Beach in Ferry Command. And
California?
yeah, Long Beach, California. Ended up in Memphis ferrying airplanes. And that was a wild
And that's
trip.
where you said you learned to fly by the seat of your pants, right?
Yeah, we had
different airplanes.
Have you heard me tell you the story, John, about showing up? What they do, you'd check in every day, and your name would come out on a list, and it would say you're scheduled to do this or that, go somewhere, and then you pick up your orders and go do it. And one Friday, I see my name on the list saying you're going to Independence, Kansas on Monday to pick up a B-17 to take to Kingman, Arizona. And I go in and I said, hey, I haven't flown B-17. Have I told you that story? And they said,
well, did you fly B-29 while you were in Sioux?
Yeah, I did later on.
Okay,
I did.
okay.
This was in the ferry.
Okay, all right.
Ferry
So
command.
you're going in. You've never flown a B-17.
Never, no. And I go to ground school on Sunday, and I look around, and I'm the only man there. Damn, this is weird. And I had a flight officer that was on the list with me as my co-pilot. He's not in ground school with me. So Monday I get on the Goonie Bird C-47, and I'm heading out to Independence, Kansas, and I look over there and I see this flight officer, and I said, are you so-and-so? And he said, yeah. And I said, how much time do you have in a B-17? He said, none. he wasn't in ground school with me.
So you're going, why weren't you in ground school?
And
He thought you had flown a B-17.
Yeah, and I said, okay. And no engineer, just me and him going out there to get that B-17.
And neither one of you flown one.
And I walked into operations and told them who I was. And I said, I'm here to ferry a B-17 out to Kingman. And they said, you signed for it right here. And I said, sign for it? And I said, you know, I've never flown B-17. And they said, Lieutenant so-and-so, come here. So he came over and he said, check him out. And you always carried your own parachute with you, John. And you took my parachute, walked out to the airplane, got in. He got in. We went out and did some stalls. And he came back around and landed that B-17. And I swear to God, he bounced that thing all the way down the runway.
He was Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah, he kangarooed it. And he pulls off at the end of the runway and said, think you can land it? I says, if that's a landing, I know damn well I can.
That's great. Did your other guy go up with you?
No, just me and the lieutenant.
So you figured if he bounced it, you could do better than
I can do that well.
But you were paying attention when you...
Well, I was watching this guy, you know, and I went in.
Was a B-17 a bigger bomber than a B-24?
Same thing.
Smaller engines?
Had right engines on it, and had Pratt Whitney's B-24 had Pratt Whitney.
So you guys take off, huh?
No, not yet. I came back around and one landing, we taxi in and it's too late to take off that day. So the next morning we take off. And we're not used to not having an engineer, you know. The engineer goes out and he pulls a pre-flight and he makes sure all your gas caps are on and all that shit, you know.